Nolan Wells case, the role of witnesses and the search for the truth. In any major investigation, witnesses often become one of the most important pieces of the puzzle. They are the people who can provide investigators with a timeline, describe what happened before and after an incident.
Bait, Tyndall says, means investigators have an added obstacle while hearing from witnesses.
So we have to make sure that we have a good, solid investigation, and we also want to make sure that witnesses that we're going to, that we're getting their impressions of what happened, not just based on what they see or hear on social media. So I think it has a real detrimental effect when people start particularly putting out misinformation on public venues and on the internet. And
Tyndall says that with the circulation of misinformation, he encourages people to direct their eyes to what's happening locally.
If you're trying to find that information, talk to the people that were on Horn Island that day.
Explain relationships between individuals and help authorities understand events that may not have been captured through physical evidence. In the case of Nolan Wells, witness accounts have played a major role as investigators attempt to reconstruct the events surrounding his disappearance and death. However, witness testimony is only one part of a much larger investigation, and every statement must be carefully examined alongside forensic evidence, digital records, photographs, videos, and other information before investigators can determine what happened. The investigation into Nolan Wells drew significant public attention because of the circumstances surrounding his disappearance. As investigators began looking into the events leading up to his death, they spoke with individuals who had been present during the trip and others who may have had information about Nolan's movements, interactions, and final hours. These interviews became a critical part of establishing a timeline and understanding the environment surrounding the tragedy. Witnesses in cases like this often face intense public attention because people want immediate answers. In the age of social media, interviews, rumors, and partial information can spread rapidly, causing certain individuals to become the focus of public discussion before investigators have completed their work. Law enforcement officials, however, must follow a process that relies on evidence rather than online theories. A person being interviewed does not automatically mean they are a suspect, and a person being mentioned publicly does not mean investigators have reached a conclusion about their involvement. One individual who received significant attention was Bart Edmiston Jr., described publicly as a former teammate and friend of Nolan Wells. According to statements from his attorney and family, Bart cooperated with the investigators, provided information, and denied any involvement in Nolan's death. His representatives have stated that he voluntarily participated in the investigation and that online accusations against him have caused serious personal consequences. No public authority has announced that Bart committed a crime or that any statement he provided was false. Understanding witness statements requires recognizing that memories can be complicated. Investigators know that people who experience stressful situations may remember events differently. Factors such as fear, confusion, distance from an event, lighting conditions, distractions, and the passage of time can all influence how someone remembers what happened. A difference between two accounts does not automatically prove that someone is being dishonest. Instead, investigators look for patterns and compare statements against evidence that can independently confirm or challenge what witnesses say.
Last time I saw Nolan, I was walking to the boat. This was before the fight. Nolan was walking towards Wyatt's boat. I was walking in the opposite direction towards my boat. And not even 10 minutes after that is when I got into a fight.
4 o'clock, altercation had happened between one of my other friends. So I went and checked on him for about 20 minutes, 20 to 15 minutes. I came back, Nolan's boat and the people that he was with were gone.
So the last time I personally laid eyes on Nolan was at like 3 o'clock. We left at 4:30. Nolan was sitting by the boat with that Katie girl, and my buddy yelled for Nolan, get on the boat. We're leaving. But she also mentioned that the last time she saw Nolan was when my buddy was yelling at him to get on the boat.
But the last time I saw Nolan,
In a case involving multiple people, investigators typically build a timeline by comparing each person's account. They examine questions such as, where was each person located? What time did certain events occur? Who communicated with whom? What actions happened before and after the incident? Were there photographs, videos, phone records, or other forms of documentation that support parts of the testimony? These questions help investigators separate confirmed facts from assumptions. Witnesses may also provide information that seems small but becomes important later. A conversation, a change in someone's behavior, a location detail, or an observation that initially appears insignificant can become meaningful when combined with other evidence. Investigators often collect large amounts of information before determining which details are important to the final explanation of events. The public discussion surrounding the Nolan Wells case also demonstrates the challenges of investigating cases in a digital era. Social media allows information to spread quickly, but it also creates the possibility of misinformation. Online communities often attempt to solve cases by analyzing interviews, photographs, and rumors. While public interest can sometimes bring forward helpful information, speculation can also unfairly affect people who have not been accused or charged with any crime. For families seeking answers, witness cooperation can be extremely important. Investigators rely on people coming forward with information even if they believe certain details may not matter. A small piece of information from one witness may help confirm another person's account or provide investigators with a new direction. That is why law enforcement agencies often encourage anyone with relevant information, photographs, videos, or memories of an event to contact investigators. At the same time, witnesses have legal rights and responsibilities. They are expected to provide truthful information, but they are also entitled to be treated fairly while an investigation is ongoing. Being interviewed by police does not mean someone is guilty, and being discussed online does not replace evidence. Investigators must determine facts through a careful process that can take time. The Nolan Wells investigation highlights the complicated role witnesses play in criminal investigations. They can provide important pieces of information, but their statements must be evaluated carefully. The strongest investigations are built by combining witness accounts with scientific evidence and objective facts. A complete understanding of what happened requires patience and a commitment to evidence rather than assumptions. As the investigation continues, witness statements will remain an important part of the effort to understand Nolan Wells' final moments and answer the questions surrounding his death. The ultimate goal of investigators, the Wells family, and everyone seeking answers is the same: to determine the truth based on reliable evidence. Until all evidence has been reviewed and official conclusions are reached, separating confirmed facts from speculation remains essential.
Oh my God!
Nolan's friend's mom just came out speaking on something that was odd with the Snapchat location her son and Nolan shared. This is crazy. Listen to this.
Now, here's the weird thing to me. This is what stands out to me the most. When we found out that Nolan was missing, my son immediately snapped him, and then Christine messaged him back and said, "I have Nolan's phone now." This was at 12:53, according to the screenshot that I have. This was at 1:53 in the morning. Okay. So he, for whatever reason, I don't know if he was gonna, I don't know why he took the screenshot, to be honest with you. I think it was maybe even a God thing, but he took a screenshot of Nolan's location on Snapchat because they shared locations with each other. And on that screenshot, it shows Nolan basically in the middle of the Gulf, like right off of Horn Island. it said that he had been at that location for 13 hours, which would make sense if you just back up that timeline. That would make sense around the time that they would have arrived at the island. His location didn't change. It said that he was last active an hour prior to that. And my son, I think it said it was like 53 minutes that 53 minutes prior to that my son had sent him a snap.
Leaked to us. And so we have this information available. As you can see it, this has been verified. I saw it with my own eyes. And this is a message from Ashley Cole to Nolan's mother. And it says, Christine, this is Ashley Cole. If or when you ever want to talk to me, this is my number. This was on July the 7th.
Correct.
Now, the question is, if you want to know what happened to your son and you think, and we got this leaked to us, and so we have this information available. As you can see it, this has been
The death of Nolan Wells remains the subject of an active investigation, and one of the most closely examined pieces of evidence has been the independent autopsy commissioned by his family. According to the preliminary report prepared by forensic pathologist Dr. Roger Mitchell, the cause and manner of death were both classified as undetermined pending further investigation. That conclusion does not establish that Nolan drowned, nor does it conclude that he was the victim of a homicide. Instead, it reflects that the available forensic evidence was insufficient to reach a definitive medical conclusion. The report explains that the examination was significantly limited because Nolan's body had undergone advanced decomposition before the independent autopsy could be performed, making it more difficult to evaluate certain injuries or findings that might otherwise have been visible. During the examination, Dr. Mitchell reported that he found no fractures of the skull, ribs, pelvis, arms, legs, or other bones that were examined, and no deep tissue injuries that would clearly indicate major blunt force trauma. Investigators also noted that the skin and soft tissues had deteriorated to a degree that prevented a complete assessment of potential bruising or superficial injuries. One finding that drew considerable attention was an area of red discoloration in the deep soft tissue over the back of Nolan's head near the occipital region. However, the pathologist emphasized that the cause of this discoloration was unclear, as there were no associated skull fractures or scalp lacerations that could conclusively identify as trauma. The report therefore described the finding as inconclusive and recommended additional investigation rather than interpreting it as proof of foul play. Another limitation described in the report involved the structures of Nolan's neck and throat. According to Dr. Mitchell, several internal neck structures, including the trachea, laryngeal cartilage, thyroid horn, and hyoid bone, were not available during the independent examination because they had already been removed and retained during the original state autopsy, which the pathologist noted can be a routine forensic practice when additional examination is required. Without those structures, the independent examiner stated he could not fully evaluate whether there had been injuries to the neck or airway, nor could he completely assess findings commonly examined in suspected drowning cases. Likewise, the lungs and stomach could not be fully reassessed because portions had already been examined during the original autopsy. As a result, the independent report stated that important forensic questions remained unanswered, including whether there was water within the airways consistent with drowning, whether there were injuries to the front of the neck, whether there was intracranial hemorrhaging, what the stomach contents revealed, and what toxicology testing would ultimately show. Dr. Mitchell also wrote that determining how Nolan entered the water and what his physical condition was immediately before entering the water would be critical in determining the final cause and manner of death. Because those questions could not yet be answered through the available medical evidence, he concluded that he could not rule out non-accidental causes, but he also did not conclude that homicide had occurred. The independent autopsy therefore raised additional questions without providing definitive answers. Separately, Mississippi authorities have completed the official state autopsy, but its findings have not been publicly released because the investigation remains active. Officials have stated that the report will be reviewed as part of the ongoing investigation and grand jury process before any public release. Authorities have also warned the public that documents circulating online claiming to be Nolan Wells' official autopsy or toxicology reports are fraudulent and should not be relied upon. As of now, the independent autopsy remains the only publicly discussed medical examination, and its principal conclusion is that the available evidence was insufficient to determine exactly how Nolan Wells died. For that reason, investigators continue to evaluate witness interviews, physical evidence, digital evidence, toxicology results, and other forensic findings before reaching any final conclusions. Thank you. Can you please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel? Nolan Wells documentary, Why Witness Statements Matter in High-Profile Investigations. The death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells shocked his Mississippi community and quickly became one of the most closely watched investigations of 2026. What began as a holiday weekend boating trip to Horn Island turned into a tragedy that sparked national attention, widespread social media speculation, and countless theories. As investigators worked to determine exactly what happened, one aspect of the case became the center of public debate: witness statements. In every criminal investigation, witness statements are among the first pieces of evidence investigators collect. They help establish timelines, identify potential suspects or witnesses, explain people's movements, and determine where physical evidence should be examined. However, statements are not automatically accepted as fact. Law enforcement compares every account against phone records, GPS data, surveillance footage, forensic evidence, digital communications, and other witness interviews before reaching conclusions. Following Nolan Wells' disappearance and death, numerous individuals who had been on Horn Island were interviewed. Among those publicly discussed was Bart Edmiston Jr., a former teammate of Wells. His attorney and family have stated that Bart voluntarily cooperated with the investigators, answered questions without hesitation, provided access to his boat and GPS information, and helped identify potential witnesses. They have also firmly denied allegations circulating online that he played any role in Nolan's death. As public attention intensified, many people on social media attempted to analyze every interview, emergency call, and public comment. Some interpreted inconsistencies as evidence of wrongdoing. Others argued that differences in recollection are common after stressful or chaotic events. Importantly, no public authority has concluded that Bart made a false statement or that any statement he gave constituted wrongdoing. One of the biggest mistakes the public can make during an active investigation is assuming that an inconsistent statement automatically proves guilt. Investigators know that memory is imperfect. People may remember events differently depending on where they were standing, what they observed, how much time has passed, or whether alcohol, fear, or confusion affected their recollection. For that reason, investigators evaluate statements alongside objective evidence rather than in isolation. Another factor complicating the Wells investigation has been the speed at which information spread online. Video clips, emergency recordings, interview excerpts, and rumors were shared millions of times. Some users claim certain names could be heard on recordings, while others developed elaborate theories based on partial information. Bart Edmiston's attorney has said that this speculation resulted in serious consequences, including reported death threats against him and planned legal action against people making defamatory claims. The Wells family's attorney has likewise emphasized that the investigation remains active and that unanswered questions deserve careful examination. Public officials have continued to seek photographs, videos, and eyewitness accounts from people who were on Horn Island that day, demonstrating that investigators are still gathering evidence rather than relying on assumptions. From an investigative standpoint, statements are only one part of a much larger puzzle. Detectives often compare multiple interviews over time to identify consistencies, contradictions, or new information. They may re-interview witnesses after additional evidence is collected. That process is normal and does not necessarily imply dishonesty by any witness. Cases involving groups of friends can be especially difficult because memories often overlap or conflict. Individuals may remember conversations differently or focus on different details. Investigators expect this and use corroborating evidence to determine which details are supported by independent facts. The Nolan Wells investigation also highlights the challenge of balancing public interest with fairness to individuals who have not been charged with any crime. While many people seek answers, public accusations based solely on speculation can have lasting consequences for those involved. As of now, the investigation remains ongoing, and officials have not publicly accused Bart Edmiston Jr. of criminal involvement in Nolan Wells' death. Ultimately, the purpose of any investigation is to discover the truth through evidence, not through rumors or assumptions. Witness statements remain important because they help establish timelines and direct investigators toward additional evidence. But they must always be evaluated in context and tested against objective facts. The Nolan Wells case continues to draw public attention because many questions remain unanswered. As investigators continue their work, it is important to distinguish between verified information, witness accounts, and unproven theories. That distinction protects both the integrity of the investigation and the rights of everyone involved while allowing the evidence, not speculation, to determine what happened.